On the STV News at 6, infected blood inquiry. Hearings into the devastating treatment scandal get underway in London.
The level and scale of this is so horrific that I ultimately think there will be no closure.
Good evening. Emotional stories from people infected with hepatitis and HIV have been heard at the start of a major inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal. Thousands of people were affected during the 1970s and 80s when they were given infected blood products.
Victims have spent decades campaigning for an inquiry and claim risks were never explained and the scandal was subsequently covered up. One victim told STV News the inquiry will not bring closure but should stop a similar crisis happening again. Carol Erskine reports.
The faces of some of the thousands of victims of this scandal shown in a video to the inquiry as it opened. After decades of campaigning, this is what families have wanted in their search for truth and justice.
I was entitled to a family life. I never had that.
Emotional accounts from some of those whose lives have been torn apart were also played, revealing their grief, anger and disbelief.
When they told me what they'd done to me, I stood at a motorway bridge to jump off it.
I don't want another glib politician to say to me, but if they hadn't received the treatment, they would have died at the time. Because part of them did die at the time.
This is the first UK-wide public inquiry where witnesses can be forced to testify. It's being chaired by Sir Brian Langstaff, who said all participants must be heard.
Those who are haemophiliacs, those who were transfused with infected blood, or those who were both. Those who were patients or those who were doctors. All are people, all are entitled to be heard.
In the 1970s and 80s, contaminated blood products were brought into the UK from the US with the Department of Health's approval. Some of the blood used was donated by prisoners and drug addicts who were paid. Almost 5,000 people were infected with hepatitis C and more than 1,000 with HIV. At least 2,400 people have died. Bruce Norval is a haemophiliac who was infected with hepatitis C and started showing signs of the virus at just 5 years old.
The level and scale of this is so horrific that I ultimately think there will be no closure for the bereaved and for those of us that are still alive. But what there will be is a way of testing whether or not the state has acted responsibly, whether or not they have done an adequate amount of support for victims.
Scotland was the first part of the UK to hold an inquiry into contaminated blood, but the Penrose findings in 2015 were branded a whitewash by victims. Today was a day many thought would never happen. The inquiry will begin to hear evidence next April. Carol Erskine, STV News.